So I've got something a little bit different for you in today's episode. I don't do many other people's podcasts as a guest anymore. It's just not very high up on my current list of priorities, even though I do see the benefit. But when I was invited by Rex Afrasiabi and also Chanell McAsey to come on their podcast, Real Estate Renovators, I was very happy to do it. I've seen Rex speak at an event, and as a result of the quality of what he did at that event, I invited him to come and speak to my private clients, which he did. And then he invited me to come on the podcast Real Estate Renovators with him and Chanell, and I'm already familiar with Chanell's work through the market. They're both high-profile entrepreneurs serving the real estate industry, both based in Melbourne, and I'm really excited to share my interview with them in today's episode. Hello and welcome to episode 236 of Commercial Real Estate Leadership. My name's Darren Krakowiak. I help commercial real estate principals to lead their people to better performance, to grow revenue in their business faster, and to have less stress in their lives. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, today's episode is a portion of an interview that was conducted on the Real Estate Renovators with Rex and Chanell. Now, in this first part of the interview, you're going to hear me talk a bit about my background, and then the guests ask me a bunch of questions about the commercial market. And while this wasn't quite triggering for me, it did remind me of when I was working in commercial real estate, and particularly when I was running a commercial real estate business, and I almost had to tap dance while talking about all the different markets. And I was at a lunch recently, which I kind of reference in this episode, but I don't reference this part of the lunch. And the part of the lunch that I remember most was that one of my clients who's running his own firm was doing the same tap dancing that I used to do, commenting on the industrial market, the retail market, the office market. And I think in this episode, you'll notice that I'm maybe a little bit rusty when it comes to talking about the markets. And I even lose my train of thought at one point. But hopefully my recovery is okay. And I'm happy to share all of the raw footage with you. So I hope you enjoy this portion of the interview, and thank you to Rex and Chanell for inviting me on the Real Estate Renovators.
Darren, welcome to the show.
Hey Rex, hey Chanell.
Hello, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like this is I've been waiting for this moment to be on the Real Estate Renovators.
Oh, you're too kind. For very few hopefully that don't know you, tell us about you.
Well, I'm Darren Krakowiak. I'm the founder of Cresuccess. We exist to help commercial real estate principals to be the best leaders that they can be, to grow their businesses faster and to have less stress in their lives. So most of my clients are the commercial real estate principals. They're the owners of independent boutique and franchised commercial real estate businesses around Australia. I also have a digital product and a membership for commercial real estate agents where we teach them the core skills of things like prospecting and their personal branding, time management, and turning listings into sales. That's there for any agents. We've got members from about 8 countries around the world.
Wow. There's a lot to take in with that. Let's unpack it. Let's go back to, if you can, about your story, because you didn't always live in Australia. You've had some high leadership roles. You've managed
CBRE, JLL.
Managed over 300 people. How did you start? What's your career path been like?
So I just sort of fell into real estate. I did a Bachelor of Economics and a Bachelor of Commerce at university. My first job out of uni was with a group called Jeb Holland Damasi, which is now part of Urbis, which is a planning and valuations. They do a bit of tenant rep. And I was in the economics and property part of it. And it was all basically working for our clients who were shopping center owners and retailers, and basically saying, if you refurbish or expand your center, or if you open a new shop, how much turnover you're going to get based on the market share analysis. So that was sort of how I fell into real estate. After that, I worked for a couple of other firms, and I then landed at JLL. And after about a couple of years at JLL, I got the opportunity to go to South Korea. So that was really something that I wanted. That was the reason why I wanted to go and work at JLL, because of the global opportunities. And I ended up staying there for 11 years.
Wow. What was the transition like to go from Melbourne to
Korea?
South Korea?
I was 27 at the time, so it was pretty...
So recently.
Very good. It was pre-global financial crisis, right? So back then there were still things like expat packages. So they took pretty good care of you. And, I was young and I just thought it was great. Like I went over there for a little bit of a recon visit. They flew me over for just a week of partying basically. They're like, hey, come and live in Korea. It's awesome here. I'm like, yeah, it is pretty awesome. So the transition was pretty easy. Like I fell into some pretty good friends in the expat community there. The job was pretty easy. When the global financial crisis happened, that sort of changed things and my role changed, but that was actually unexpected. But that's when my career really started to take off because I was given some additional responsibility that meant that I was, I guess, no longer, I was in research before and consulting, and then I started to transition into tenant representation first and then office leasing, so becoming more of an agent.
Yep.
So that was the inflection point, which then led to other opportunities.
Sales as well?
I didn't do sales, tenant representation and office leasing, and then country management.
Country management.
Mm.
Sounds.
Drawing it back, Darren, I know we obviously are acutely aware, but for our wider audience, what are the key differences between commercial and residential real estate?
Okay, so commercial, when we talk about commercial, we're typically talking about three main sectors, which is office, industrial, and retail. There are some newer emerging sectors like the care sector, self-storage, data centers. Some people might put development sites in commercial, but typically it's everything except residential. And I think the difference is that it's a little bit more sophisticated. It's probably a lot of the same principles that apply in residential also apply in commercial, but it's less of an emotional investment, except if you're an owner-occupier, I guess.
Yeah.
So probably owner-occupiers are thinking more like a person who's purchasing their own home, but most people that are purchasing commercial property are investors. And that just means that it requires, I think, some different skill sets perhaps. It's probably more like if you're selling to an investor as a residential real estate agent, more of your clients are like that. They're looking at things like the yield. They're looking at things like comparable sales results. They're looking at things like the future use of the asset and, you know, whether it's got the highest and best use. They're looking at more things than just, is this a place that
A lot more analytical.
Yeah, a lot more analytical based on the numbers.
So in terms of skill set, what sort of skill set would you need as opposed to a residential agent? What are the defining skills? Do you need a university degree?
No, there are plenty of people, I've got clients and plenty of people have been super successful, risen to the top of commercial real estate firms that haven't had any formal education. I think nowadays probably you'd be a little bit harder pressed to get a job in one of the bigger firms if you don't have a degree, but it hasn't been a prerequisite before. The only prerequisite is the same thing that exists in the residential sector, which is to have your relevant estate license, whether as a representative or as the actual agent's representative, and also the agent principal. I can't think of it. Was it the license?
Officer
Agent's rep certificate.
No, officer in effective control.
Thank you. Yes. So that would be what you require, and that's all you need, basically. Yeah.
So sorry, Rex, you're just leading on to this. So with residential, what you really need to understand is obviously your local marketplace, the demographic of people, you know, the types of properties that are prominent in the particular area in which you're listing and selling. What do you really need to know in commercial?
Look, I think probably it's not so much about a patch. So most residential agents are covering a patch, and they might be working within a certain value range. In commercial real estate, it can be a little bit broader. I think still it's better to specialize, but you might, for example, specialize in Asian investors, or you might specialize in values between $1 and $5 million, but do a little bit in office and a little bit in industrial. I think it's still traditionally more likely that you'd be focusing on one of the asset classes and probably focusing on sales or leasing, although industrial tend to be both sales and leasing. So I think it's just a different type of specialization, and it's not always just based on the geography, which is more what people in residential real estate tend to focus on. The drive for an inspection might be a little bit longer if you're a commercial real estate agent a lot of the time.
Can I just, and I'll just be the last question about residential, we'll move on to your coaching and everything else that you do, but there's so much, like when it comes to commercial agents, there's not as many as residential agents. In every suburb you go, there's a patch and there's like 5+ residential agents. And them, in my opinion, they're missing out on a big opportunity for themselves, because if they added commercial to their portfolio of things they do, there's a wealth of opportunity for them that they don't do. And from a coach for commercial agencies, well, how would a residential agent convert to becoming adding that commercial agency into their agency?
Yeah, I would caution residential real estate agents from dabbling in commercial real estate because it just requires there's a lot of, even though it's the same qualification, there are a lot of different regulations and legislation that you might need to be aware of. If you're a residential real estate agent and you're getting some good leads in commercial, my recommendation would be to find a good commercial agency that you can refer to, that you can get into a referral arrangement with, collect your 20% or whatever agreement you come up with, and just focus on your knitting in residential.
Not try to add it or learn it.
Well, I think you could choose to transition into commercial, but I think this is, unless you're in a small regional area where I think there are probably, it makes sense to do both because there's only so much work to do. But if you're in a major capital city market, resi-mercial, I don't think really works. Far better to specialize. The other thing I'd say is, in terms of differences, is whatever's happening in residential right now is probably a trend that we can expect to see in commercial maybe in 2 or 3 years' time. So commercial's a little bit more traditional, it's a little bit more staid, and probably, if you look at things like social media trends, they're probably faster moving and more quickly adopted in the residential real estate space than they are in the commercial space.
Interesting.
In the commercial space right now, what do we need to be aware of? Obviously, we're watching the news. We're seeing that commercial's taken a pretty big hit. I think we thought it would sort of slow down post-COVID, particularly in office spaces, CBD leases. What do we need to be aware of in the commercial market right now?
So a lot of things. That could be a whole topic of discussion in and of itself.
Yeah.
So look, interest rate movements are important. So we're obviously now in an expansionary cycle where interest rates are falling. That's likely to bring more confidence from buyers.
Didn't fall last time, unfortunately.
They didn't fall last month. They did by the time of release.
Yeah, hopefully it did, yes.
So, interest rate movements, I think, are important. There are more mum and dad investors buying commercial real estate than there has been in the past. When you look at the proliferation of commercial buyers agents that are opening up opportunities to, say, people purchasing in the sub $2 million category, that's giving investors, particularly a residential investor who's maybe got a couple of residential properties, they might decide, okay, I feel more confident now about buying real estate. Let's diversify a little bit and move into commercial. And I think that trend's likely to continue. And if you look to the United States, which again is probably a little more advanced in some of the trends, one of the things that goes on there is there's generally representation on both sides of the transaction for both leasing and in sales. And often, particularly in the leasing transactions, the tenant, the one who's holding the tenant, is compensated a lot more than the person who's representing the landlord. Whereas in Australia, typically it's landlord representation and the tenants or the buyers are generally doing their own thing, although buyers agents is obviously a growing and emerging segment.
Not so much I haven't heard so much in commercial, but it should be a big growing section because it's a lot more involved in commercial.
Most commercial buyers up until recently, I think, have been experienced buyers. So therefore they have that capability because they've bought and sold, and maybe their families have bought and sold, or they're institutional buyers which have in-house capability.
Yeah.
But I think now that there's more interest in purchasing commercial property for mum and dad investors, there's more of a need for these buyers agents.
Is that because of land taxes and all the rest? People sort of selling off their residential assets and looking to invest in commercial? This is a new trend.
But land tax is still on commercial as well.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. It could be if perhaps, like, I own some residential property in Victoria, and I probably am looking now to buy a commercial property, but I probably wouldn't want to buy one in Victoria because I'm already at a pretty high threshold on land tax. So that might influence where I decide to buy, or maybe I put it in a different vehicle so I'm not attracting the same land tax through my personal name as through another vehicle. I think it's more about, sorry, I lost the question.
Oh, that's all right.
It's about land tax. And
Land tax.
is it about land tax and why they're moving into from residential to commercial?
Commercial as an investment opportunity.
Yeah.
We can move on if you prefer.
I had it and I lost it.
That's all right. Happens to me all the time. What about, can I ask, Darren, what about the retail space? That's because that's taken a bit of a hit. What's happening in retail?
So I'm not an expert in the day-to-day of retail. My clients are. I've got a few clients that trade, buy and sell, and also lease real estate on behalf of their clients, retail. What I'd say is that probably in the CBD, we're starting to turn the corner a bit. I think probably some of that convenience retail that focuses on the office worker is still a little bit depressed. There's probably, my personal opinion, too many coffee shops. But if you look at the foot traffic in the CBD on the weekends, it's actually up a lot since post-COVID. So that means there's more destination type retail in the CBDs. At the same time, more people working from home means that there's probably more of a need for retail in the suburbs. And also there's a trend towards service or experiential type retail as opposed to you more sort of walk into a shop and purchase apparel or homewares, for example. So the type of retail is changing. I think retail is still a good asset class. There are some disadvantages from a actually land tax perspective because it's more difficult to pass on the land tax costs to a retail tenant because of the Retail Tenancy Act, and Rex can tell you all about that. So that was one reason why I probably wouldn't prefer retail, given some of the uncertainty around what governments look to do with land tax. But yeah, I think...
And compliance, there's a lot more compliance for retail than industrial or commercial.
Yeah, I think commercial is the one that used to be the ugly duckling, which now most people like because there's a lot of demand for it. It's pretty easy to manage and the tenant takes care of most of their things.
But like, I don't know, this is sort of sorry, Rex, might be somewhat outside your scope, but you walk down somewhere like Chapel Street that used to be a very bustling shopping district, and now you walk around and you just see for lease.
And someone chasing you with a machete.
Yeah, that's
or
true.
burnouts on the street.
That's true. It's become quite the area. But why is that? I mean, why would you have a commercial shop front and then not want to lease it out? Because I'm hearing that it's because the prices are too high. Is that correct? And again, I know this isn't where your business lies. This is purely out of curiosity.
I was at a lunch recently where there were a number of private owners of commercial real estate, and we were talking about Chapel Street. And there are a lot of owners on Chapel Street who just they're quite happy they want to preserve the price. And at the moment, there aren't people who are willing to lease at that price. So therefore they're not meeting the market. And so something's going to have to change, whether it's a change of use or a change of planning laws or those landlords deciding at some point because of, one of the reasons why real estate transacts, it's death or it's divorce generally. So maybe something in the family circumstances will change, which will then cause the selling of that real estate, and then maybe the new investor will be a little bit more amenable to meeting the market.
So they prefer to stay untenanted.
Some do. Yeah.
Sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can see how fast it can affect the vibrancy of an area.